Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
This episode is brought to you by Experian. Are you paying for subscriptions you don't use, but can't find the time or energy to cancel them? Experian could cancel unwanted subscriptions for you, saving you an average of $270 per year. And plenty of time. Download the Experian app. Results will vary. Not all subscriptions are eligible. Savings are not guaranteed. Paid membership with connected payment account required.
Welcome to the Sportsman's Voice Roundup, your weekly look at conservation and sporting community news happening across the nation and on the Hill. Thanks for tuning in. This is the TSV Roundup. This week on the Sportsman's Voice Roundup for the week of July 22nd, 2024, we're taking to the Hill where we're talking about the ACE Reauthorization Act, a priority for CSF. We're going to take it out of Maryland and recount the events of last week at our National Assembly Sportsmen's Caucuses Executive Council meeting. Going to head down to Florida, where the Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus leadership have done a good job by writing a letter opposing a wilderness designation within the Big Cypress. Hold on to your hats on this one. A computer glitch impacts Washington State special permit hunt permits for deer and elk. Trust me when I say it's not good news. And the last 2 items for this week, a discussion on shooting ranges and how they impact access and conservation funding. And then finally, a note from the Mid-Atlantic on just how to get involved in your state legislators and the steps that you want to take to know how the whole process works so your voice is heard in an effective way. All that and more on this week's Sportsman's Voice Roundup. Welcome back, everybody, to another weekly broadcast of the Sportsman's Voice Roundup, your weekly look at stories from across the nation on policy that we are dealing with at the state capitals and on the Hill. Let's see what we're cooking with this week for the week of July 22nd, 2024. Heading down to the Hill, House Natural Resources Subcommittee hears important CSF priority. The NASC Executive Council holds a successful mid-year meeting in Maryland. Florida Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus leadership opposes wilderness designations within Big Cypress. A computer glitch impacts Washington State special hunt permits. Recreational shooting is an unsung hero for our sporting traditions. And finally, how to get involved with the legislative process to protect your hunting and fishing rights, specifically in the Mid-Atlantic region. Let us now start on the Hill. House Natural Resources Subcommittee hears important CSF priority. The American Conservation Enhancement Reauthorization Act, otherwise known as the ACE Act, reauthorizes nearly a dozen provisions that will bolster the conservation of fish, wildlife, and their associated habitats across North America and provides an important protection for America's anglers. The ACE Act has been a long-standing priority for CSF since first enacted with CSF support in 2020. Some highlights here. Recently, House Natural Resources Committee on Water, Wildlife, and Fisheries held a legislative hearing to consider a number of bills, including this top priority for CSF, ACE Reauthorization Act, H.R. 8811. Bipartisan legislation is led by House CSC members, as well as within the Senate. ACE is an important piece of legislation that reauthorizes what I've said, critical fish, wildlife, habitat conservation programs across the nation for a period of 5 years. Specifically, these programs include the North America Wetlands Conservation Act, National Fish Habitat Conservation through partnerships, among other funding programs, as well as important protection for recreational anglers. The Wetlands Conservation Act provides strategic investments to conserving and restoring degraded wetlands across North America. Since its inception 35 years ago, it's provided over $2.1 billion in federal grants. It has leveraged nearly $4.3 billion in non-federal contributions. In total, there have been over 3,300 Wetland Conservation Act projects that have contributed to conservation of nearly 32 million acres of wetlands in states, Mexico, and Canada. Additionally, legislation reauthorizes a national fish habitat conservation through partnerships and is a state and locally driven program that leverages partners to conserve priority aquatic habitat needs, restore fish populations. Our friend and our Director of Fisheries Policy, Chris Horton, recently was reappointed to serve on the NFHP board. They're lucky to have him. The ACE Act also includes important protection to prohibit the EPA from regulating the use of lead fishing tackle under the purview of the Toxic Substance Control Act. We've covered this in the past. The EPA has consistently reaffirmed state management authority of lead fishing tackle, and this legislation will ensure the EPA cannot be petitioned to regulate lead tackle under TSCA for a period of 5 years. CSF thanks the House leaders of this legislation as well as the Natural Resource Committee for hearing and discussing this important bill. We look forward to continuing to work to see this legislation cross the finish line in 2024. That reporting from Taylor Schmidt. Heading down to Maryland, we had a nice time with our NASC Executive Council down in Piney Point, Maryland. The National Assembly Sportsmen's Caucus, like I said, NASC Executive Council is a bipartisan group of state sportsmen legislators who lead the NASC network by providing advice to the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation on the administration of the NASC program, representing states from Alaska to Maine, South Carolina, and New Mexico. Executive Council members collectively possess decades of legislative experience dealing with complex sportsmen's issues, and their service to CSF and to the NASC network is critical in protecting outdoor sporting traditions for future generations. In short, these are the folks in your backyards that we're always talking about. These are the Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus leaders, co-chairs. These are the folks that are in your backyard. So when we say reach out and talk to them, these are the folks. This is the Executive Council that represents the NASC network across all 50 states. But you have an issue, you have a priority that is concerning sportsmen's related issues, conservation. We ask that you go get involved, go to these members, and then they can bring it to your local CSF contact, and then it can get up-channeled. Anyway, more about the event. As I said, we met in Piney Point, Maryland for the annual mid-year meeting. With logistical support provided by CSF, the mid-year meeting is the NASC Executive Council's annual summer meeting where issues impacting hunters and anglers are discussed, and programmatic planning for the NASC network is undertaken. Also planning for the 21st NASC Sportsmen's Legislative Summit being held in Baton Rouge was also an emphasis of the meeting. And again, you guys have heard me say this. That's going to be a heck of a time. It's going to be a great opportunity to join us, to meet folks from the NASC network, legislators, partners, agency partners. It's just a really good time. And we're going to have some fun, too, down there in Louisiana. EC members are elected by their peers to serve 2-year terms. Executive Council members are committed to the mission and goals of NASC and serve as an advisory entity for CSF's management of the NASC program. CSF support for the 50 state sportsmen's caucuses and more than 2,400 state legislators that are members of their respective state sportsmen's caucus is guided by the advice of the Executive Council, which works with CSF to formulate pro-sportsmen's policy and facilitates information sharing among state sportsmen's caucuses, conservation partners, and industry. Among the topics, there's a wide range of topics discussed at this year's mid-year meeting, including state and federal policy updates, emerging issues and trends that we cover here often, state caucus infrastructure improvements, NASC regional policy forums, the development of new issue briefs, and more. Outside of the business meeting, Executive Council members took time to enjoy some of the angling opportunities available in the Chesapeake Bay. And a special thank you to Maryland State Senator Jack Bailey for hosting the meeting and showcasing the Old Line State's hospitality. CSF would like to further thank Frost Tax Law, Hunters of Maryland, Kelly Generator and Equipment, Kelly HVAC, Maryland Grain Producers Association, Southern Maryland Delta Waterfowl, and TC Tent Rentals for underwriting the event. Without these partners, so much of this stuff is not able to happen. It was a good meeting. Had a really cool opportunity to go have a little field trip out to an island there and on the Potomac, and I'm gonna get tore up for forgetting the name of it, but I want to say it's the Jefferson Hunt Club. I mean, let me go double check this before I sign off here, because I will get tore up by folks in the know for not being on my game on this here. But regardless, while I look for that name, historically speaking, what a fantastic place the Jefferson Islands Club is where we're at. This is a place where I can only imagine so much policy, so many top secret discussions were held by presidents, legislators past and present. There's a sign-in book there. I don't think I'm letting any secrets out here, and if I am, I'm sorry. I don't think I am. There's a really cool book there that goes back decades, and one of the signatures in there that one of the caretakers was able to show us was a signature of Harry Truman, well after his term as president. But nevertheless, there it was, Harry Truman's signature in this book that we got to contribute to as well as visitors to the island. And just so much history. If you're a history buff and you tie that history in with hunting and fishing and conservation, man, what a cool place to be. A lot of cool artifacts within the building. So just a really unique opportunity to go check out some really historically significant places in Maryland. So on top of the policy and then the issues of the day, got to, because of Senator Bailey and the host committee, putting that together, some really cool history was experienced, and in a very, very small way, we became part of that. How I look at it anyway. It's pretty cool. So great planning was had, a really enthusiastic response to that, to the information from our EC members, and excited for the NASC Summit and strategy that we look to employ here going into the next sessions. All right, heading down to Florida. Florida Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus leadership opposes wilderness designation within Big Cypress. Here's why. Congressionally designated wilderness oftentimes reduces access for sportsmen and women and limits natural resource management capabilities in favor of preservation over conservation. Establishing wilderness designations within the Big Cypress National Preserve would negatively impact science-based management practices to improve wildlife habitat as well as quality hunting opportunities in southern Florida. In 2022, the National Park Service released a supplemental draft backcountry access plan environmental impact statement for Big Cypress. In response to the supplemental draft, CSF submitted comments supporting components of the plan that would have opened over 100 miles of trails for off-road vehicles within Big Cypress, further improving access for hunters, and opposing the proposed 147,000 acres of congressionally designated wilderness. Earlier this month, Florida Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus co-chair Representative Danny Alvarez, Senator Jim Boyd, and Senator Jason Brodeur sent a letter to the Florida Congressional delegation on Capitol Hill opposing congressionally designated wilderness within the Big Cypress, encompassing roughly 180,000 acres The Big Cypress is a critical piece of public land that provides access for many sportsmen and women in South Florida. With such a large expanse of land, many backcountry areas of Big Cypress are difficult to access without the use of off-highway vehicles. While it was encouraging to see the National Park Service considering to open a significant number of recreational vehicle trails, it is discouraging to see wilderness designations being considered within the Big Cypress that would do nothing but negatively impact conservation efforts and access to outdoor recreation for youth, elderly, and those with mobility limitations. The letter that was sent by the co-chair stated, without the use of ORVs within the Big Cypress, natural resource managers would not be able to maintain or improve habitat through practices such as prescribed burning, invasive plant and animal control, and more, leading to habitat degradation over time. Habitat loss not only impacts game species and the opportunities they provide hunters, but also impacts non-game species. A hands-off approach to management within the Big Cypress is counterproductive to implementing sound conservation practices that negatively impacts resource management and access and opportunity to Florida sportsmen and women. CSF applauds the leadership of the caucus for standing up to protect public access in an incredibly important place for hunters and anglers in the Sunshine State, who in 2023 alone generated over $90 million in conservation funding through the American System of Conservation Funding. That would be a big bummer, man, especially, you have all that public land and to have it cut off, holy smokes, it's enough to find a piece of public ground to hunt in most of the states, and then they want to designate an insane amount of acres to a congressionally designated wilderness, almost 150,000 acres of hands off. It's madness. It's madness. So good on these the mentioned co-chairs there in Florida for getting after it and engaging their delegation there on the Hill, because without, it goes without saying, really. But many of you know this, but for those that don't, without the access, without a place to go, what the hell is the point? If I can't go hunt somewhere, why would I get a license? Why would I go hunt if I can't? And then obviously the ripple effect of that and the non-participating hunting public. That's just absolutely insane. And who knows what the motivation here is? I hate to put the tinfoil hat on, but these days it seems to, well, never mind. At the very least, we can cite here the article that it's more for preservation than conservation. There could be underlining reasons where, certainly it's a tactic that's employed by the anti-hunting crowd. So if they're bending an ear of a legislator and, they don't want to outlaw hunting straight up, well, we can certainly cut off the access. And by default, by de facto rule, now people can hunt just because there's nowhere to go. Florida's a big state. It's not easy to get around. If you're cutting off all these acres in a particular section of the state, it's very cost prohibitive to travel up and down that state. Here where I live in one of the smallest states in the country. If tomorrow all the private land was like it is everywhere else, I would have a hard time getting around and hunting. If the top 3 states here in New England, followed the model of all the rest of the states in the country, pretty much. Yeah, man, that's a bad deal right there. That was an ongoing issue, so stay tuned. We'll hear from Mark Lance, who manages that area. Whew. What's interesting, an interesting aside here, is that Florida is currently going through a process, and we've talked about it here before, about amending their state constitution to guarantee the right to hunt and fish. Wouldn't that be something for that to go through and all of a sudden you have no place to hunt. I got to imagine those are opposing opinions. And if you have the right to hunt and fish, you got to have a place to hunt and fish. So anyway, those two things don't go together. More to come. Oh boy, here's a bungle of a story. A computer glitch impacts Washington State special hunt permits. I'd give you the why it matters from Marie here, and it's very well written, but I think we all know why it matters. Well, let's get into the really, I want to make sure I give her due. In short, the carefully planned 2024-2025 special hunt season in Washington State was thrown into chaos after a software error was discovered by the third-party administrator. That error resulted in the misallocation of hundreds of deer and elk permits, leaving Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife with a difficult decision around fairness to hunt applications and herd conservation. You're not coming out of this in a good way. God bless those poor folks. Third-party software, we said, was found to contain a coding error that incorrectly allocated special draw permits in Washington. They were forced to manually, they being the department, was forced to manually correct the errors in the draw results that incorrectly selected 738 individuals for special permits. The agency attempted to ensure that those individuals still had hunting access where biologically available. So this all occurred on June 12th when they held their annual special hunt permit drawings through the third-party administrator and announced those results. And unfortunately, on the 27th, the vendor tasked with creating the raffle notified the agency of the issue of the original draw results. I'm laughing not because this is funny, folks. Like, it's so crazy and ridiculous. As hunters were, then here we go. As people who got drawn were busy making their plans and scouting the hunt areas tied to their special permits, the agency was faced with a conundrum. How do you correct the draw error in a way that maintained the integrity of the special permit system without negatively impacting herd population management? After discussion and consideration, the agency went through the list to manually award deer, elk special hunt permits to the individuals who should have been given priority in the original drawing. Unfortunately, this decision meant that 738 hunters had been incorrectly selected and assigned tags that they had not qualified for. According to their website, they being Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, quote, worked hard to secure hunting opportunities for these impacted individuals by increasing the number of permits where biologically feasible. Goes on to say, while the software error may be unique, the root conversation is not. Each day, our state fish and wildlife agencies are tasked with the delicate balance of maximizing recreational opportunities that are biologically feasible and support long-term conservation goals. Representatives from CSF discussed the raffle results with the department staff and helped to ensure that our partners in Washington had access to all the information they needed. First of all, I put in for a couple moose lotteries here in the Northeast, as so many of you do in the lower 48, every year. I would be, first of all, my name comes up. I'm like these folks. I'm fired up. I'm stoked. I'm getting on Onyx. I'm doing whatever I got to do, calling buddies, where my draw permit is, and we're doing the recon like that. And then you're going to come to me a couple days later, Mr. Bird, we got some bad news. You've been putting in for this hunt for years, and in fact, you weren't drawn. Like, oh my gosh, could you imagine? It further underscores the point I often get to is, you gotta stop trusting the machines, man. I mean, technology's great. It's got applicability everywhere, right? I'm not like a Stone Age person. Like, golly days, when it comes to stuff like this, when it comes to voting, where you just can't, I mean, what the heck is so wrong with, paper and pen? Used to be you'd put the names in a tumbler and you reach in and draw it out and boom, there you have official record, fella, gal's name on it. You drew them. They're going to get this unit, this date range to go hunt, whatever the heck it is. Like, you can't really screw that up. Likewise with voting, voting occurs one day a year. You show up, you take your pen out, your pencil, you fill the bubbles in, have your name written down that you've already been there by the nice little old lady who's volunteering at the polling place. Like, you can't really screw that up. But when we start putting these machines in charge of this stuff, I mean, look, here you go. The voting stuff aside, I mean, just look here with this complete bungling of a lottery system. It's something so very simple. I feel bad for all involved. I mean, no one comes out of this happy, I don't think, except for the people that were actually drawn, and they're going to go about their business. But, the agency, they hire a third party. Like, the third party obviously is the common denominator here. But, the department's got to make these phone calls. Like, there's just nothing good about that. Awful all the way around. Man, those 738 people. We can certainly follow up Marie. I don't know how it works in that state. I'd have to imagine if there's preferential points or whatever that system looks like, that those people who had their permits incorrectly allocated to them would not lose any preferential points that they have earned, or again, however that works. Man, hopefully the karma comes around and hooks them up next year. Good luck to those who were actually drawn. But man, happier news. Recreational shooting is the unsung hero of our sporting traditions, by Bob Matthews here. Very good article about highlighting, recreational shooting and what it does for our community, for our resources, and how this whole thing is funded. And often this is a well-visited theme or topic here on the program. Let's see what Bob has to say. Speaking in Indiana, the Indiana Department of Natural Resources recently announced that it is accepting applications for grants to support the development of shooting ranges in the Hoosier State. Recreational shooting is a silver bullet, pun intended, for conservation funding in America, with more than 52 million Americans spending nearly, here's a good number, $17 billion on the sport each year. In addition to allowing shooters the opportunity to hone their craft and sight in firearms, which in turn creates a more ethical and successful hunters, shooting ranges provide a safe environment for newcomers to become comfortable with firearms and join us in the time-honored outdoor traditions. Recognizing the positive financial and participation impacts, CSF has long advocated for increased opportunities for recreational shooters and new or improved ranges like those supported by Indiana's grant program. They are a great example of how that can be achieved. Article goes on to talk about Pittman Robinson, Dingle Johnson, how this whole system works. More numbers here to round it out. Recreational shooting and hunting have a combined economic output of nearly $150 billion and support almost 1 million jobs each year. On top of providing opportunity to the existing pool of sportsmen and women feel at home on the range, shooting ranges offer a controlled, safe environment for newcomers, lapsed shooters to become comfortable with their firearms, oftentimes resulting in their confidence to take an ethical shot while afield. With more ranges comes more opportunity for those newcomers to join us in the outdoors and continue generating the funds that our state fish and wildlife agencies desperately need carry out conservation duties, ensuring the protection of our outdoor pursuits generations to come. Yeah, man, that's how this works. Participation. Got to have them. Got to have resources. Got to have places for people to go. See Mark's Florida article. You ain't got a place to hunt. If you don't have a place to go shoot safely, responsibly, how do you make it work? There's a good example. Good job, Indiana. And finally, another instructional article here from Haley Leager in the Mid-Atlantic. It's actually a really good article here. You know, so much nuance in state legislatures from how a bill becomes a law process works. It's different than the old Schoolhouse of Rock or whatever the heck it was there, with the little bill moping around on the state capitol steps there. It's highly nuanced, and each state is a little different. So Kaylee brings to you, the state she manages as our Mid-Atlantic Senior Coordinator, Delaware, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and the Virginians, and how you can get involved. And I invite you to really take time with this article, because we're always saying you need to get involved, need to call. But she does a very good job here outlining the process and when the best time to engage and get involved is. And see if I can just find the highlight here. In short, a lot of these are early on. So if there is a bill of concern, and once it gets introduced and read, and then it gets assigned to a committee, she goes on to highlight, not every state has the ability to have in-person testimony, if at all. Some offer in-person, some offer virtual, some only offer written. So it's really imperative that if you're going to take that step to get involved, like knowing that process, and oftentimes early on in the process is the best. Again, we've covered that here on this program on how to make your thoughts and concerns heard by those committee members who will eventually decide the fate of that proposed bill, whether it continues on or whether it just stays right where it is and never sees the light of day again. Knowing how that process works can be a very effective way of getting stuff done that you want to see done in your state, either as an individual or as a sportsmen and women coalition, whatever that looks like in your state. Kaylee's article here is a great example, and should motivate all of you to check out, what's happening in your state and how to go about it. So, again, you can get all of these articles every single week by going to congressionalsportsman.org, signing up for the free newsletter every Monday, or unless it's a holiday, we come at you on Tuesday, and they automatically hit your inboxes 5:00 Eastern. And you can have them and then listen every Wednesday. This is the complement to that. We go a little deeper. I give my opinions on some things, do a little unpacking. Anyway, thanks, guys. As always, that's this week's Roundup. No feature podcast this week. I do invite you to go back, check out the episode on Rigs to Reef. I think it's highly entertaining, but really cool ideas from Congressman Graves out of Louisiana, Chris Horton, and kind of diving into that whole deal there. And I'll go back and check out the other features as well. Some really good stuff out there recently on suppressors and conservation funding, a whole lot of good stuff. So go check that stuff out. We'll see you next Wednesday for another wrap up of what's happening around the country. And then next Thursday, we bring you another feature episode of The Sportsman's Voice. As always, we are your inside connection to outdoor legislation. Thanks so much for having us along. We'll see you next week. Take care. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Sportsman's Voice podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, your support is crucial, and you can help us out right now by leaving a review, filling in those 5 stars where available, sharing this episode with friends and family, and engaging with us socially. CSF can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Together, we can protect the outdoor sports we love and continue to keep you informed wherever you are. That's it for this week. Until next time, we'll see you later.